might be somewhat mundane or repetitive, but also they're so current and cogent and also just critical in terms of the crisis in education and what does it mean for 21st century education and equity and justice and liberation. So we've heard those terms before, but there's a real meaning to them, and there's a real triage taking place in terms of the lack of equity and equality, particularly as it pertains to education and the educational industry. But as we were talking to Jesse and I were kind of chatting just before we went on air. Everything's kind of connected these days. So you can talk about education with a small e, a big E, whatever word you want to substitute. But what does it mean about this humanity and our evolution, and how do we kind of prosper, not just disintegrate? So Jitu Brown is calling in, and he's the executive director, national director for Journey for Justice, and it's really a pleasure to have him share with us from Chicago, and we're going to talk about his initiatives and his national approach and some reports he has out. And Jesse Walkie Man Turner's here to kind of keep me on my straight and narrow and to behave myself. Jesse, good morning.
Good morning. No need to keep Mr. Ficklin on a straight and narrow. He walks the straight and narrow path all the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jesse, that I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I'm just that straight and narrow path might lead me directly into some sort of incarceration if I don't watch myself. I often wonder if I had been born during or more active or younger during the Black Panther stage, or whether I was born in like 1830 or whether I was born in 1730, what I would have done or joined or been a part of. So I've been blessed to still be alive and healthy as I approach my 70th year. But it does amaze me, Jesse, that we have some of our freedom fighters that are no longer around. And how do you take those risks and acts of profiles and acts of courage, and regardless of how old you are? But again, this show is talking about taking these leaps of faith, these courageous actions, and really being inspired. And that's why G2 is calling in, really to inspire all of us and to share what's going on nationally from a educational equity standpoint, from how you can get involved regardless of whether you're young or old or black or white, green or yellow, or even mixed, however you want to define yourself, Jesse. That this is why this is so important. Just before G2 calls you introduced G2. There was some conference you attended.
Yes, Jitu was our keynote speaker at the National Council of Teachers of English, WLU, Literacy for All Conference in July. And they asked me to introduce Jitu because we know each other.
Yeah.
And the National Council of Teachers of English asked me because they wanted me to let Jitu know that this was a special group of teachers.
Yes.
So I shared that these were whole language teachers who practice the pedagogy of love. They're the ones that buy the books, that go the extra miles, that stay later, do the extras. It was a perfect marriage. G2 came there, laid the truth on the line. He does it well, and then tells people, you need to get involved. And what I really love about G2, not only does he walk the walk and talk the talk, but he has a message. And his message is really, black and brown people have a right. A right to a say in how you educate their children. And he brings that message well all the time. And this is what this is about.
And organizes, and there's a report that his organization has just released, and he's going to share a little bit with us about some of his activities in terms of saving some schools in Chicago. He was recently on Amy Goodman recently interviewed him, and I watched some of the TED Talks, and so it's really a pleasure to have a national spokesperson and activist kind of share with us his insights. And so don't just think you're listening to this as an abstract kind of thing. This applies to wherever you might be on the planet. I mean, even if you're in some countries that aren't English curriculum designed, education and how it's translated and gets this one world connection is just so important. So you two should be calling in relatively shortly. Jesse, you have share with folks. This is your third time on the show, fourth time.
Yeah, I believe so.
Right.
I tell people that for about 170 years, this nation has had inequity and injustice in its public schools, particularly for black and brown, poor, and special education children. Not even on day one did we have equity. So I'm like William Wilberforce. Remember the man that fought the slave trade in England. If it's a lifetime battle, it's a lifetime battle. And if I go down, I lose it. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go there. My purpose is to fight for the righteous right of our children. If we can't bring equity to our public schools for children, then there can be no equity, there can be no justice in this nation. Because if you will not do it for children, do you really think they will do it for the adults?
Again, you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Jitu Brown is going to be joining us shortly, National Director for Journey for Justice. And Jesse, just as you were remarking, it occurred to me that you had mentioned upcoming in a series of events in terms of Moral Mondays. Some of you might have heard that Reverend William Barber has just received a Genius Grant from the MacArthur Foundation, and that money will be put to good use. But the Moral Monday kind of initiative is kind of under his rubric, but Bishop John Selders and yourself, Jesse, have been involved. Share with us, tease us a little bit. But there's the Moral Monday is not over. It's in fact it's embryonic. So there's some upcoming events in general that people want to be on the lookout for.
So Moral Mondays, last night we were meeting with our group of leaders, with Bishop Selders, Pamela Selders, and others, and we were discussing some initiatives. And one of the initiatives we really feel strongly rooted to is one that puts a series of public conversations about this false sense of this school choice initiative that seems to always close Black and brown schools. In Hartford, the reason I asked Jitu to come is that we closed Batchelder, one of the last. There's very few community schools left in Hartford now, and they closed down one. And of course, we know the pattern. Jitu will tell you it's always in Black and brown communities. So that was a Hispanic school. There's two other schools that are going to be in North. One is in the North End. They're going to, we seem to be closing down the schools with the greatest number of teachers of color, and the browner and the blacker the school, the quicker they're going to close them down.
So some of these meetings
are to bring that to light, and we're going to have them we're going to do it in Hartford at Trinity. We're going to bring it to Central. We're going to bring it to Southern Connecticut State University. We hope to be there for the Social Justice Month that they have there. I was a keynote speaker there last year, and we hope to be there for that.
Excellent. And Jitu Brown has joined us. Jitu, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
How you doing, sir?
Everything's good, brother. How are you?
Fine. As you know, Jesse's here to keep me out of trouble, so we're in good shape. We have a protector in our midst.
Indeed. What's happening, Jesse?
Oh, it's all good, G2. Glad you're here.
Yes,
we glad you're here on the radio. And next thing, we got to bring you here physically.
That's it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We need some organizing.
Call me, I'm coming.
All right. Yeah.
G2, let's jump right in. We'd shared a few things, but as National Director of Journey for Justice, and you have your report out, and you've been involved with this issue, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk in so many ways. Share with folks what you want them to know about you and how they can get involved.
Okay. First, Tom, thanks for having me on. My name is, again, Jitu Brown. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. Been a community organizer most of my adult life with a group called the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. And in 2013, I was pushed to help create a national network, national organization called the Journey for Justice Alliance.
Tremendous.
We started out with 12 cities, these basically community-based organizations in 12 cities. Now we are a thriving network, I would say, with membership in 30 cities. That means not necessarily not limited to individuals. Our core membership are organizations. So grassroots community-based organizations, primarily led by people of color, definitely with a constituency that's Black and brown, in 30 cities across the United States. Our goal is to use community organizing as a tool to win community-driven school improvement. And that we're a lot stronger if we fight together opposed to in our own individual silos. We believe that the weakness of the American education justice system is the lack of equity, the failure to address the mandate of Brown v. Board. And because of that, we do not accept school privatization as a reasonable alternative or a reasonable direction for public education. We understand that school privatization is directly connected, and this is based on my lived experience in Chicago. As you know, Chicago was really the birthplace of privatization in the U.S.
Yes.
As Chile was the birthplace of school privatization globally. So in Chicago, in the late 90s, as they began to tear down housing projects, public housing projects, they also began to close schools. Despite the hard-fought promise that at least 33% of the people would be able to return to the neighborhood, of course, Chicago reneged on that promise.
Mm-hmm.
And so school closings, charter expansion, and the loss of affordable housing has been sort of this evil set of ingredients that have led to the purging of black people from the city of Chicago.
A toxic.
To the tune of, in 2000, we were 53% of Chicago's population, and in just 18 short years, we are 32% of Chicago's population.
That relates to the gentrification. Okay.
And that reality is not just a Chicago dynamic. It is happening all over the country. In Washington, D.C., that we used to call Chocolate City, they're now, somewhere around 47% African American when they were like 75%.
Yes.
Not even 20 years ago. Detroit, Philadelphia, Oakland, New Orleans, Baltimore, Cleveland. We can go on and on. So we have to understand that the issue with public education is not bad teachers. While there are some bad teachers, right? It is not disinterested parents. While there are a small percentage of parents that are disinterested. Young ghetto youth. The issue in public education is this deep-seated hatred for black and brown people that has never been reconciled. And that hatred can be reflected in the inequities.
Just not to interrupt, but just let people know, unfortunately for radio, folks kind of come and go and get out of their car and go into work, etc. If people want to find out more information about you and your organization and your new report is out and the book, etc.
Absolutely. So people can reach us at our website is www.j4jalliance.com. They can reach us on Twitter at J4J_USA. They can reach me on Twitter at Brother, BROTHAJITU. And they can call us directly at 773-548-7500 if you want to, join the growing movement for equity in public education.
Indeed, and it's so impressive with you mentioning the number of cities and the number of partner community organizations. That's so key. You were on Amy Goodman recently.
Yes. I, along with Mark Warren, a wonderful teacher from New York, and Zakia Sankara Jabbar, who is the field organizer for the Dignity in Schools campaign, and is from a group called Racial Justice Now in Dayton, Ohio. We are a few of the people that are featured in a wonderful book called Lift Us Up, Don't Push Us Out. And it really chronicles the emerging movement for education justice, the victories that people have waged across the country. So when I say we're featured, it's more like the fights that we were involved in. So my segment was around the fight for diet and the 4-year struggle that culminated in a hunger strike to stop the closing of our last open enrollment high school, which we won, and the school is open today as a sustainable community school.
So just repeat that again. There was a school that was scheduled to close, and you and the community came together.
Yes. In 2011, Chicago Public Schools voted to close Walter Dyett High School, despite the fact that, and this is the Bronzeville segment of the south side of Chicago. For anyone that's not familiar with Bronzeville, it's about 10 minutes from downtown Chicago off the lakefront. It's a historic African-American community. It was considered part of the black metropolis in the 20th century. I mean, people like Red Fox, Dinah Washington, Ida B. Wells, Louis Armstrong, Mahalia Jackson, Sam Cooke, Nat King Cole, Richard Wright are folks who either are from or lived in Bronzeville. And not only the people, but the historic institutions that actually thrived in Bronzeville. So it's a community with a lot of history and a lot of meaning to people in the neighborhood. But this is also, like I said, we're 10 minutes from downtown Chicago, right off the lakefront. So we, ever since they started closing the public housing projects, there have been really intense efforts to gentrify a neighborhood. And the community organization that I come from is one of the few groups that were mobilizing people to fight that push out. So we were successful in stopping some school closing, and then we were hit with 4, all in our neighborhood in 1 year. It was definitely a political move by Mayor Rahm Emanuel at our organization. Diet, which was the high school I sat on the local school council at for over 10 years. Fuller, which was a elementary school that I had done programs in for 17 years, taking young people to the United Nations. We had a huge parent base there. Jackie Robinson, which was another school that we had deep relationships with, in Woodson, were all 4 schools where we had members, and the mayor targeted all 4 of those schools. And so despite the fact that Diet had some historic gains, in 2008, we had the largest increase of students going to college in the entire district. And 2 years straight, the largest decrease in arrests and suspensions. In 2011, we won the ESPN Rise Up Award. We beat out over 500 other schools around the country as a small school doing great things but needed help. And the response of Chicago Public Schools was to close us.
Now, did I hear you say—
And the community mobilized.
When you talk about
a 4-year campaign to really show the inequity in Chicago Public Schools, where there were high schools that served white students that had a completely different reality than us. And we had friends at some of those high schools that began to share data with us. And so we began to really go aggressively at the fact that there are 2 Chicagos. And you want to starve one school and label it as failing when, in fact, we've been failed. And so we began to flip the language. And as we began to resist, and we developed our own proposal for the high school, the school was being phased out, and the students began to fight back.
And did I hear
as the students began to organize, we were in a position where the district kept moving on with its proposals to close the school. So ultimately what happened was we developed a proposal for Diet to be a global leadership and green technology school. It was the best proposal out of all the proposals submitted. We got national support, and the district reneged on its commitment to support our proposal. So we had prepared ourselves for that. And so we began being mentored by Latinx parents from a community called Little Village, who had waged a hunger strike in 2003 for their school, which is now Little Village High School. They had a 19-day hunger strike.
So you actually
explained to us what to expect. By us, I mean our education committee at the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization.
So
we identified the folks that were prepared to go on the hunger strike. Some folks couldn't do it for health reasons. Some folks were concerned they lived in public housing, and if they got arrested, they could be evicted. So we were able to get a good core group of parents, along with a few allies from around the city, and a few educators, 12 of us who committed to the hunger strike. And I just want people to understand that I'm talking about a hunger strike to save a high school from actively engaged community members.
Indeed.
Which should be a blessing to any district when you have community members who care deeply about their school. We were demonized. And so we went on the hunger strike. And thankfully, because of our network, we were able to make it an international story. I mean,
this is just so bewildering. Yes, they had the need to go on a hunger strike.
It was on the front page in the New York Times. It was all in the Washington Post. It was they covered it in France and Istanbul, Turkey, and we actually began to have people come from around the world to sit with us. And it resonated with people because people around the world feel disenfranchised
globally
when it comes to the issue of education. So and people around the country really showed deep solidarity by fasting with us on a day, having a day where everybody held up the signs, Fight for Diet. We trended #1 on Twitter a number of times. And ultimately, after 34 days of starving our bodies, we won.
34 days.
And Diet is open today. It's Diet High School of the Arts, but it is a sustainable community school. It has the African-centered curriculum that we insisted upon. It has the resources to be a community school. 80% of the children come from the neighborhood, and 99% of the freshmen are on track to graduate.
Fantastic.
That's the story of the fight for diet.
Indeed, and the struggle continues, as they say. You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Jesse Walkie Man Turner is here with me, and via call, and we have Jitu Brown, National Director of Journey for Justice. And Jesse, in terms of some of the things that Jitu's just mentioned, I can see you're nodding and thinking. Share a little bit about what the connection, what the Connecticut connection might be in this regard.
Well, New England is a kind of strange culture. It's got this culture supposed to be the individual, and we don't have that sense, that broader sense of community coming together. Schools have been closing in Connecticut. I mean, we just closed Batchelder and Hartford. The parents did not want that school closed. Robert Codall, who was a board member there, did not want that school closed. It's predominantly Hispanic school. Mm-hmm. One of the Hartford is losing community schools. I mean, private charters are opening up. Magnets are coming in. All kinds of things are coming in, and the district is struggling to keep its community. So that's why G2, when I was talking to Tom, I said, well, we need G2 here because this is happening across. They're closing 3 schools in Hartford. They're never mind that it's not only the schools. I think we should also know that other anecdotal information. Our schools in black and brown communities are losing teachers of color, losing music teachers, art teachers, gym teachers, home economics classes. They have less sports available to play for them. I mean, it's unbelievable. But Jitu, we're glad you're here, and we need to learn to fight the DU battle. We need to learn to unite like Chicago. That's what we need. We need an organizer.
And Jitu, share with us. You've recently, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've recently released a report that's really informative and cogent, I believe, in terms of this issue.
Tom, could you say that one more time?
I believe your organization has recently released a report, a research report.
Yes. In May of 2018, we released a report that people can download for free on our website, and it's really the first wave of a major piece we're going to do on inequity in public education. It's called Failing Brown v. Board. What we did is we looked at 12 cities, and we wanted to look at a school that served predominantly white students, or even a large percentage of white students, and schools that serve predominantly black and brown children, and said, well, let's, as Malcolm X said, let's make it plain. What are they offered in regards to curriculum, and what do we offer? And the results were consistent in its level of just obscenity. It was just 2 different worlds. And our point is that is what's not addressed. People have to remember, I mean, for those of us that weren't around there, but just from history, that, the movement, the litigation, Brown v. Board of Education, was not about black people's desire to go to school with white people. It was about organizers trying to figure out, how do we navigate the hatred where the state intentionally sabotages the education of children just because of who God made them.
Yes.
And so they said, well, maybe if our kids go to school with their kids, maybe, we can get resources too. And the response to Brown v. Board was vicious.
Yes.
People remember Senator Harry Byrd organized what they called fierce resistance to Brown v. Board. And today, that resistance is just as fierce. Because, one of the things that happens is they've labeled our schools as failing with no conversation about inequity that is so deep that children have completely different experiences. For example, we looked at a school in Chicago called Agassiz. Agassiz is not far from Mayor Rahm Emanuel's house. Maybe 35% white students, relatively diverse school, but 35% white. This school has, in a bustling community, neighborhood school, student to teacher ratio of maybe 1 to 14, a teacher aide in every class, drama, music, speech therapists, behavioral therapists, every type of resource that the children could think of. Art, music, library, fully stocked library with the librarian. But then we looked at Mollison Elementary on the south side of Chicago in the Bronzeville community. Average class size of 28 students in a class. The school nurse having to share the front desk with the security guard. no space for least restrictive environment learning. So children that need speech therapy getting their speech therapy under the stairs on the first floor. One teacher aide in the entire building. A library with no librarian. And no world language. So those children have, if education is inspiration and information, if that's what education is, and that's what I believe it is, then teachers must have the opportunity to inspire, and children must have the opportunity to be inspired. And so the experiences that you give them in the classroom, in the school building, the school culture has a lot to do
absolutely
with what the child's experience will be. And so what we realize across the country is that education in Black and brown communities are being sabotaged by the state. I wanted to just say one thing
absolutely.
around
We have another 20 we have another 20 minutes or so.
What's happening in Connecticut. And I say this to all of my brothers and sisters that I'm working with, that we have to realize that one thing we have in common is that whether you're in Hartford, Connecticut, whether you're in Chicago, Detroit, Philly, San Juan, Puerto Rico, is that the state does not listen to us. Now, what does that provide? That provides an opportunity for us to be the ears that our people don't have. That's what we did with Diet. We engaged mothers, students, fathers, people in the community around what is your vision for what schools should look like. We brought together academic expertise with community wisdom, and we did not segregate our conversations. We had people meeting around curriculum. We had people meeting around school climate. We had people meeting around what are wraparound supports. We educated ourselves around what they were so that people could contribute to the conversation. Students were in conversations around science. It was amazing. And that type of energy created a demand because they built something. They built a proposal for what they wanted their school to look like. So what did that mean? That meant as we were engaging people, people were prepared to fight for what they were helping to build, not just for buy-in, but for real input. And I believe at a very fundamental level, it's not sexy, but at a very fundamental level, that's one of the things we have to do around the country. We have to fight for sustainable community schools, and we have to begin to engage the people that no one talks to around what they think should be happening in their schools. And we shouldn't be amazed, but we will be amazed by the wisdom and the brilliance that comes out of those conversations.
And
so I just want to add that.
Absolutely. Share again for someone that might be tuning in. You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Jesse Walking Man Turner is here, and Jitu Brown is on the line, National Director of Journey for Justice. How folks might, other folks from other parts that are not members at the moment of your coalition, how they can get involved and how they can kind of find out what you're up to and kind of join forces, because as Jesse's mentioned, as you've mentioned, the synergy that we can build is really incredible.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Jitu Brown, National Director of the Journey for Justice Alliance. We are a national network of grassroots community-based organizations in about 30 cities across the country. You can reach us on our website, www.j4jalliance.com. You can reach us on Twitter at J4J_USA. You reach me at brother, BROTHAJITU, brother Jitu. You can reach us. We have a Facebook page. You can reach us on our Facebook page, Journey for Justice Alliance. Or you can call us directly at 773-548-7500.
I love that. I hope folks are listening to how transparent you are. That's so key. Jitu, we haven't met. We haven't laid eyes on one another in person, but through this technology. But if I can ask a little bit of a semi-personal question, how can folks help you right now?
Absolutely. I think
help us.
We're looking for organizations to join, and we're also looking for individuals to join. We are taking individual memberships in J4J. We have community organizing trainings around the country.
Fantastic.
We have a national newsletter that we release every 2 weeks. We provide resources for folks that are engaged in the fight for education justice. So if folks would like to join Journey for Justice, they can go on our website and they can register right there. I think it's the annual dues are like $50 a year or something like that. and check our resume. I mean, people, know that, we are not, we are made up of people that have real history in the struggle.
Yes.
And so that's one way I think people can be engaged and be involved. And also, we're starting a series.
Mm-hmm.
We have a campaign called the We Choose campaign.
Mm-hmm.
We choose equity, not the illusion of school choice.
Mm-hmm.
So people that want to be involved in the fight for equity can reach out to us. But there's a new series we're going to start called School Choice is a Scam.
School choice is a scam.
School choice is a scam.
Right.
And
love
what we're going to be doing
it.
every 2 weeks. No, I'm sorry. Every month we're going to be releasing either videos, newspaper articles on the failure of the school privatization movement, and then the frauds that the privatization movement usually props up to say these are like, everybody looked at Michelle Rhee like she was the new dynamo in education. And then as you examined, you realize, well, wait a minute. She falsified her test scores in Baltimore. She pushed out her children in Baltimore in order to make her scores look better. Same
Baltimore,
thing in Jeffrey, Canada with the Heartless Children's Zone.
Okay.
I mean, we looked at that as if that was, because we understand the need for social services wrapped around education, but then we realized that for 3 straight years, they pushed out students in order to make their scores look better. That's a scam. That's a hustle. That's a fraud. That's game, right? And so Barbara Burr Bennett was Eli Broad Institute graduate, was led education in Cleveland, helped destroy public education in Detroit, and I guess as a reward became the CEO of Chicago Public Schools and tried to promote all of these gains. But when it came out, she was giving out no-bid contracts like they were lollipops at the doctor's office. And now she's in jail.
Tell me how you feel about it, Jitu.
Excuse me. These are
it's a tragedy.
Just an example.
Yes.
I mean, we know no matter what, often in the argument around school privatization, people say, well, there are good charters. Yes, there are. Jay Cutler was the quarterback of the Bears, and every now and then he'd make an unbelievable throw because he had an unbelievable arm. But he won about 20% of his games, and guess what happened? He got fired. So why, in the privatization movement, is it okay that only 1 out of 5 charters outperform traditional public schools?
Yeah.
That's been a consistent fact over a decade. That no matter how they flipped it, that has never changed. And so, to me, if you batting 20%, you get demoted. You don't get promoted. And so I think what we have to do is we have to demand equity.
Yes.
We have to be courageous enough, black, white, brown, to realize that the biggest problem in public education is inequity. Now, there are other huge problems. There's an antiquated system that still operates like we're in the factory age of the 1940s and 50s. We get that's a huge problem. But the reason why America ranks 17th in education in the world, and we're outdone by countries like Singapore and Japan and Finland, is because of inequity. Because when you take out poverty, America's number 2.
Yes.
So what does that mean? That means we know how to educate children. There's a group of children in a capitalist society, a racist capitalist society, that we refuse to educate. And that's why we did the Failing Brown v. Board report, because it's not because of a lack of capacity by those children. They're not the problem. The powers that be are the problem. The status quo is the problem, because Rahm Emanuel sent his children. He didn't send his children to a school that was test-driven, that neither did Arnie Duncan, and respectfully, neither did President Barack Obama. They didn't send their children to the schools that they were where they were privatizing. They sent their children to the University of Chicago Lab School. At the University of Chicago Lab School, teacher-to-student ratio of 1 to 23, art and music as a core curricular subject, testing as an assessment tool, not as a punitive measure. Right? And so if that's good enough for their children, why is that not good enough?
Amen. Jitu, do me a favor. We have Jesse here in the studio. Let's put him on the spot. You have any questions for Jesse Walking Man Turner?
I have a big question.
All right, go ahead, go for it.
When is the brother going to be able to come to Connecticut, man? I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. I'm ready.
We're working on it. We're working on it. Yes, we are. We need you here, and we definitely not just to talk to us, but to help us understand that people have power, that communities have power, that communities united won't be defeated. that they could stand up. That's why we need you here, and we need some of that organizing, that good stuff. And you do an excellent job on that, Jitu. I've had the pleasure.
And I'm glad you said that, because this is not like about me coming to somebody's city to run my mouth.
No.
What we do with our members and our friends is we sit down and if it's needed, sometimes it's not needed. Sometimes folks have that expertise in house, and what they may want is help with media and help with other things. But if it's needed, we will sit down and help strategize, because we are made up of black and brown folks who have swung the hammer of justice and landed.
Yes.
Right. One of our core members is New York City Coalition for Education Justice. They organized to make the mayor of New York establish 100 community schools and commit to no privatization. It was an amazing organizing victory, where in the largest city in this country, they made the people that want to be mayor bend to their education demands. They're no smarter than any of us on the phone. They're no better than any of us on the phone. They just know how to organize, and there's a difference between activism and organizing.
That's right.
And I'm not, judging either one, but they are different. To me, they're different art forms, or I call them artistic sciences. They're different. And it's important to know, Reverend Jesse Jackson is an activist. He is an amazing activist. He's accomplished incredible things in his life, regardless of what people think about him. He's accomplished amazing things on the power of his celebrity and his activism. Ella Baker was an organizer. She knew how to establish institutions to help people gain power, to speak power to power. That's what I was trained in, and I'm thankful for that. I'm proud of that.
Yes.
And so that's what we would bring to any conversation. We will spend the time, we will invest the time, because, at the end of the day, our goal is not to create movement superstars. Our goal is to transform reality, to leave this world better than we found it.
Fascinating.
One of my favorite quotes, and something that I try to live by, is one that Malcolm X said many, many years ago. He said, I'm not an educated man, nor am I an expert in any field, but I'm sincere, and my sincerity is my credential. And we try to live by that. We try to walk the walk.
And Jitu, I'm glad you posed that question publicly for Jesse. We're going to certainly widely disseminate this particular audio file on Facebook Live and SoundCloud. But also, Jesse, as you know, the Yale School of Management has a major educational conference every springtime. So we'll reach out to them and others in the state that provide these kind of venues where you would definitely bring some impact and energy to us.
Absolutely.
And a shout out, by the way, to Jerebu. She's your daughter?
No, she's the operations manager for Journey for Justice.
All right, well, a shout out
like
to
my
her.
little sister.
Oh, well, she said, I see. Excellent, and a shout out to her for kind of her activism and her marketing strategy and expertise. And I enjoyed my dialogue with her. Tell her hi for me.
All right, I will.
But we're kind of winding down for another 8 or 9 minutes, Jerebu, and it really, Jitu, and again, thanks so much for calling in and taking the time. I know it's an hour earlier, so we got you up a little early this morning, but hopefully that was okay.
No, 5:30 every morning. It's all good.
All right. For again, when you've been interviewed, I've seen some of your TED Talks and some of your the Amy Goodman interview and others, and you've been this media route for a while. What message are they not hearing clearly, or when you read what you've said, when you read people try to interpret your message, what do you think they're not really focusing on as you would like them to?
I think, all in all, one of the issues with the media is that they've adopted the narrative. Not all, like places like Democracy Now! and our conversation right now are often a lot more open and folks are hearing you. But I think there are two things. That I'm not some, and we are not like some wild militants, screaming racism. We are saying that our analysis and our lived experience, we know what it feels like to be hated. I want to remind, remind people, imagine when all you want is a great school for your children, and you you do the work. You're involved. You're active. You're taking young people on field trips. You're doing everything to be an asset. And the district does everything in its power to sabotage what you're doing at the school. You win an ESPN Rise Up Award. Your school is on ESPN, and the next year they close it. The next year they close it, and all you see is failing school, failing school, failing school. And none of those stories of Diet leading the city and the percentage of children going to college and a world-class restorative justice initiative, none of those things are in the dialogue. So as the media, I think the media has accepted the narrative of the privatization movement. Very anti-union, very pro-privatization. Like often I've dealt with the media and they say things like, well, what's your relationship with the union? And I always tell them, I said, well, I don't agree with the union on everything, but I have a lot more in common with a teacher than I do with a hedge funder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the question should be, who are those people, right? Who is Eli Broad?
Mm-hmm.
Who is David Vitale, who was the board president of Chicago Public Schools, an international banker who received and was also the CEO of a contract school outfit called the Academy of Urban School Leadership. And he received over 27 no-bid contracts while the company, he helped facilitate over 27 no-bid contracts for the Academy of Urban School Leadership when he was the CEO of Chicago Public Schools. Barbara Bird Bennett got busted for one. He's probably in the Cayman Islands somewhere right now. She's in jail.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jitu, but are you suggesting that our current Secretary of Education falls into that category?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I think that, but see, there's an issue. See, Betsy DeVos is exactly who she's supposed to be. She's never deviated from that. She's been an ultra right-wing philanthropist and helped really orchestrate the destruction of public education in Michigan. It's clearly documented. But Arnie Duncan was no better. Arnie Duncan was not qualified to be CEO of Chicago Public Schools, had never been a teacher a day in his life. Chicago student scores on the NAEP exam flatlined during his time in Chicago Public Schools. Children organized against him to fight zero tolerance policies, and he was promoted to be the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education. And I would ask your listeners, what's the real difference between him and DeVos? Vouchers?
Okay.
Vouchers? But other than that, school closings, school privatization, deaf ear to inequity, ignoring community voice, they all are the same. And so I think that the media has not done a great job of really doing an analysis of what's happening in public education. Education is too important to leave to a soundbite. You get what I'm saying? It's too important. I mean, people have literally died. People have literally, braved lynch ropes, beatings, for public education. And for us to be so, as a public, to be so what I would call an unconscious constituency, and then for the media to be even more sleep, I think is a problem. So I think that's been part of the frustration during this time. So I think I use the media. I try to utilize the media very strategically. I don't go looking to do 1,000 press conferences. I think we have really worked to make sure, even in a hostile environment, which is the corporate media, to be able to get our message across.
Indeed.
And so we've been able to do that reasonably well.
Well, we definitely appreciate you sharing some of your morning. And again, we're making the public, Jesse and I are making the public commitment to getting you here sooner rather than later. You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show. We're kind of winding down, and Jesse Walking Man Turner is here with me in the studio, and Jitu Brown is on the line calling in from Chicago, National Director for Journey for Justice. And just Google Jitu Brown, look at some of his TED Talks, and and other speeches he's given. The organization Journey for Justice. Uh, Jesse, I want to give you kind of your final last words, and then Jitu as well. Any final thoughts that you have? And again, a lot of my listeners have heard me say this, and Jitu, I'm going to spring it on you once again. I'm looking forward to having you call in again. I'm looking forward.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Count me in.
Okay, Jesse, go for it.
Sure. We've seen a Supreme Court appointment made this week, despite a Me Too movement. We've seen a woman testify and be ridiculed and mocked by a president. Not to make light of the Me Too movement, but our children are also Me Too children. Black, brown, special education, and poor children have received an inequitable and unjust education for 170 years. So it's almost like we need a Me Too child movement over here, and no legislator, no governor, no president, no commissioner of education, no United States Secretary of Education should be able to claim they are doing a good job as long as that inequity and an injustice exists. So I'm ready.
Tremendous. Jitu?
I would say that, we had an amazing, but at the same time, a very worrisome moment here the other day where the murderer Van Dyke was found guilty of, shooting Laquan McDonald 16 times.
Yes.
And the fraternal order of police up in arms, and angry. And as Jesse just mentioned, the President of the United States, who has multiple allegations of sexual assault, misconduct, and ridiculing, a victim of sexual assault, and a proponent of school choice that none of us have chosen. What we're seeing is a belief system. There's a belief system that does not care about women, does not care about people of color, does not care about human suffering. Remember, this president, after President Obama finally signed the order to stop the drilling on the pipeline for our sisters and brothers, in Standing Rock.
Yes. This
president turned around, and one of his first acts was to authorize the drilling. So there is a belief system. If values are beliefs that govern your behavior, there's a belief system that we are at war against. So the question is, who is the we? So those of us that are on the left, we have to confront our weaknesses, right? If we would have been stronger, right, on issues of racial justice, if we are stronger on issues of gender equity, then there will be no chance for Donald Trump. People have to remember that Donald Trump didn't win because of a movement. Donald Trump won because Democrats stayed at home, because the status quo, people are rejecting it. So to me, our charge is people of color and all of the issues that come with our communities that we bring to the table, whether that's Native American, whether that's Latinx, whether that's Black folk, issues of women and gender justice, climate justice. We have to develop what are our values, what is our belief system, and then how do we begin to spread our belief system around the country? Because what we must remember is one thing: Trump and the boys may run D.C., but they don't run your neighborhood. They don't run your neighborhood. And so if we organize in our neighborhoods and we challenge ourselves on the stereotypes that society has filled us with, we've all been infected with it. Me too.
Yes.
So if we challenge ourselves on that, then we can build the type of movement, because there is a movement emerging. There are people fighting back all over this country, but we have to challenge ourselves, because if we leave any of us out, we lose.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jitu. Thank you so much for calling in. And again, you made the commitment to kind of come back on, and we hope to kind of lay eyes on you sooner rather than later And
Yes,
I know you were on the hunger strike, but I've seen some of your pictures, and it seems that you've recovered from.
I've recovered. Yes.
I won't say fully recovered, but it seems you're back on the good foot.
Yes,
you're back on the good foot. And Jesse, thank you as always for being here. And again, everyone, this is the Tom Ficklin Show, and really just appreciate your listening. And again, be well, and talk to you next Monday. Brian, thank you also. Take care, Jitu.
All right, take care, bro.
Bye-bye.